This was supposed to be the perfect celebrity love story. A global sports dynasty, a fashion empire, and a wedding designed to symbolize unity, legacy, and continuity. The Beckham name has long stood for control, Polish, and family togetherness. But according to Brooklyn, one moment during that wedding night quietly shattered the illusion. What looked like celebration masked tension that had been building for years. Soon after, a public statement detonated those private fractures, turning whispers into headlines and distance into declaration. Sources suggest this was not a misunderstanding but a breaking point. Because when Brooklyn walked away, it was not just from a dance or a night, but from an entire legacy. And the fallout may be permanent, forever. Brooklyn Beckham grew up inside one of the most carefully managed families in modern celebrity culture. From the moment he was born, his life unfolded in public, framed by the global fame of David Beckham and the fashion empire of Victoria Beckham. Every milestone, every appearance, every choice was filtered through the weight of the Beckham name. According to Brooklyn, that visibility came with expectations that were never spoken out loud but always understood. He was expected to represent unity, success, and control, not just as a son, but as a symbol of a brand that had been built over decades. As the eldest child, the pressure landed first on him. Sources suggest that while opportunities came easily, freedom did not. Brooklyn tried modeling, photography, and creative ventures, each move watched closely and judged instantly. Public criticism followed him everywhere, with labels like privileged and unfocused becoming part of his narrative. According to Brooklyn, failure was never allowed to be private. Every misstep felt amplified, not just because of fame, but because it reflected on the family's image. That context matters when looking at April 2022, when Brooklyn married Nicola Peltz in Palm Beach, Florida. On the surface, the wedding was a spectacle designed to merge two powerful families. The setting was extravagant, the guest list elite, and the coverage global. It was meant to be a defining moment, not just for Brooklyn and Nicola, but for the Beckham legacy itself. According to public appearances, everything looked flawless. But behind the scenes, Brooklyn claims tension had already begun to surface. One of the earliest points of strain involved Nicola's wedding dress. According to Brooklyn, Victoria initially offered to design it, a gesture that appeared generous and symbolic. However, he claims that the plan fell apart close to the wedding, leaving Nicola emotionally distressed during a moment that was supposed to be joyful. Nicola ultimately wore Valentino, but conflicting accounts soon emerged in the media, with different sides downplaying the issue. According to Brooklyn, this was not simply about fabric or fashion. He describes it as the first moment he realized how much control and expectation surrounded even the most personal decisions. As the wedding approached, the pressure intensified. Sources allege that Brooklyn felt caught between honoring his parents and protecting his partner. The event was no longer just a celebration of love, but a stage where power dynamics quietly played out. According to Brooklyn, the tension did not explode immediately. Instead, it simmered beneath the surface, unnoticed by most guests and viewers watching from afar. The breaking point, according to Brooklyn, came during the reception itself. The moment that has since dominated headlines involved a performance by singer Marc Anthony. What was reportedly planned as Brooklyn and Nicola's first dance took an unexpected turn. According to Brooklyn, Marc Anthony called Victoria Beckham to the stage, referring to her publicly in a way that shifted attention away from the bride. Brooklyn alleges that Nicola was left shocked and humiliated, running from the room in tears while guests sat in stunned silence. Brooklyn claims he was then placed in an uncomfortable position, dancing with his mother while his wife was absent. Multiple attendees later described the atmosphere as awkward and tense, though accounts vary. According to Brooklyn, that moment was devastating. Not because of the dance itself, but because of what it represented. He describes it as symbolic of boundaries being crossed and roles being confused at a moment when his new marriage should have been centered. In Brooklyn's telling, the wedding dance was not an accident or a misunderstanding. It was the culmination of years of subtle control and blurred lines. He claims it permanently altered how he viewed his family dynamic. According to him, the incident was so emotionally damaging that he and Nicola later chose to renew their vows privately, away from cameras and expectations, simply to reclaim the experience. Part 1 makes one thing clear. The wedding did not create the feud. It exposed it. What appeared to be a single uncomfortable moment was, according to Brooklyn, the point where everything he had been holding in finally surfaced. The cracks were already there. The wedding just made them impossible to ignore. When Brooklyn finally broke his silence, the impact was immediate and irreversible. According to his public statement, the wedding was not an isolated incident but the final confirmation of patterns he says had defined his life for years. He accused his parents of exerting control over his personal decisions, interfering in his marriage, and prioritizing what he described as brand Beckham over his emotional well-being. Those words landed heavily because they reframed decades of carefully curated family imagery into something far more complicated. Brooklyn's statement did not read like a spontaneous outburst. Sources suggest it was measured, deliberate, and written after years of internal conflict. According to Brooklyn, he had tried repeatedly to address issues privately, believing that time and distance might ease tensions. But he claims the pressure never truly stopped. He alleges that expectations continued long after he became an adult, shaping where he appeared, how he behaved, and which parts of his life were deemed acceptable for public consumption. One of the most symbolic steps Brooklyn took was changing his public name to Nicola Peltz Beckham. To some, it seemed like a modern stylistic choice. According to Brooklyn, it was far more meaningful. He has suggested that the change represented autonomy, a way to assert his identity as a husband first, not simply as a continuation of a famous lineage. Names carry power in celebrity culture, and this shift quietly signaled a realignment of loyalty and belonging. Alongside the name change came claims of conditional support. According to Brooklyn, affection and approval within the family increasingly felt tied to participation in public-facing moments. Miss an appearance, skip a post, or step away from the image, and the emotional distance allegedly grew. He claims that love became transactional, filtered through optics rather than connection. Whether that perception is shared by his parents is unknown, but for Brooklyn, it appears to have been deeply felt. This contrast became sharper when he described life with Nicola. According to Brooklyn, her family environment emphasized privacy and emotional presence rather than image management. Despite their wealth, he claims their values felt fundamentally different. Brooklyn has repeatedly suggested that being with Nicola allowed him to see an alternative version of family life, one where mistakes were not headlines and support did not require performance. That comparison, he says, made returning to the old dynamic increasingly painful. Public reaction to Brooklyn's statement was swift and divided. Some viewers sympathized with a son attempting to break free from a powerful legacy, interpreting his words as overdue honesty. Others felt the accusations crossed a line, arguing that private family matters should not be aired publicly. In that split response, the narrative quickly expanded beyond a personal dispute and into a broader conversation about control, privilege, and autonomy within famous families. Nicola Peltz soon found herself pulled into the center of the storm. Critics accused her of influencing Brooklyn or driving a wedge between him and his parents. Supporters pushed back, arguing that she was being scapegoated simply for standing beside him. Brooklyn addressed this directly, insisting that Nicola did not isolate him but instead supported his independence. According to him, the choice to distance himself was his alone, motivated by a need for peace rather than rebellion. As the discourse intensified, it became clear that reconciliation was no longer the immediate goal. Brooklyn's language suggested finality, not pause. He did not frame the separation as temporary or conditional. Instead, he presented it as necessary for his mental health and future. That framing shifted the stakes entirely. This was no longer about resolving conflict. It was about redefining life outside a dynasty. Part 2 underscores a crucial shift. What began as wedding tension evolved into an identity rupture. Brooklyn was no longer negotiating boundaries. He was drawing them firmly. The realization that reconciliation might not happen marked the point where this feud stopped being emotional fallout and became a deliberate separation, one that neither side appears ready to reverse. What Brooklyn's accusations ultimately challenged was not just his relationship with his parents, but the foundation of what the Beckham family represents to the world. For decades, brand Beckham has been synonymous with discipline, unity, and perfection. David's football career, Victoria's transformation from pop star to fashion icon, and their carefully managed public image created a blueprint for a modern celebrity dynasty. According to Brooklyn, that same blueprint became suffocating from the inside. He suggests that the brand did not simply coexist with family life, but gradually overtook it. Growing up under constant visibility, Brooklyn claims the pressure began early. He has described living with a constant awareness that his actions were never just personal, they were public statements. Every choice reflected not only on him, but on the Beckham name. According to public statements he has made, this created deep anxiety and a fear of failure that followed him into adulthood. While outsiders often viewed his life as effortless, Brooklyn suggests that he experienced it as relentlessly monitored, with little room to experiment or fail privately. This context is critical when examining the persistent Nepo baby narrative that surrounded him. Critics frequently questioned his career shifts and creative pursuits, interpreting them as products of privilege rather than exploration. According to Brooklyn, that criticism cut deeply, not because it was entirely unfair, but because it reinforced the idea that he could never escape the shadow of the family brand. Success was expected. Failure was magnified. Identity became blurred. In this environment, Nicola Peltz represented a sharp contrast. According to Brooklyn, she did not arrive as a controller or manipulator, but as a catalyst. He has suggested that her presence highlighted what he had been missing: emotional safety without performance. Despite her own wealth and public profile, he claims her family culture prioritized privacy and autonomy over image. That difference, Brooklyn says, forced him to confront how much of his life had been shaped by optics rather than choice. One of the more emotionally charged claims Brooklyn made involved moments where he felt compassion was withheld. He has alleged situations where support he expected from family did not materialize, reinforcing his belief that emotional closeness had become conditional. Whether those situations were more complex than described is unclear, but for Brooklyn, they became part of a larger pattern. According to him, the cumulative effect was alienation, not from a single incident, but from years of emotional distance. Meanwhile, the silence from David and Victoria Beckham has become a story of its own. They have not publicly rebutted Brooklyn's claims, nor have they issued statements directly addressing the accusations. Some observers interpret this restraint as strategic, an effort to avoid escalating a deeply personal matter. Others see it as emotionally detached, a continuation of the very dynamic Brooklyn described. According to insiders, the silence reflects devastation rather than indifference, but the lack of response has allowed speculation to grow unchecked. This silence also raises questions about power and narrative control. For a family known for meticulous image management, saying nothing is a rare choice. It suggests that any response risks validating the conflict or worsening it. Yet absence does not neutralize impact. Brooklyn's words continue to circulate, reshaping public perception of a family once seen as unbreakable. At its core, this feud threatens the mythology of Brand Beckham. The idea that unity and perfection were always organic now appears more fragile. According to Brooklyn, what the public saw was carefully maintained, not effortlessly lived. That distinction matters because celebrity dynasties survive on belief. Once the illusion cracks, it becomes difficult to restore. The uncertainty surrounding this situation is what makes it so compelling and so painful. There is no clear villain, no definitive truth that can be universally accepted. There are only competing experiences, filtered through memory, emotion, and public scrutiny. Brooklyn appears committed to distance, building a quieter life centered on his marriage and personal projects. David and Victoria appear committed to silence, perhaps hoping time will soften wounds that words cannot. Part 3 leaves us with an uncomfortable reality. This is not just about a wedding dance or a single fallout. It is about what happens when a family built on unity fractures in public, and whether legacy can survive honesty. Whether reconciliation is possible remains unknown. What is clear is that once the perfect image cracks, it cannot simply be edited back together. The Beckham legacy now exists in two versions, the one the world believed in, and the one Brooklyn says he lived inside. Now that you have the full context, I want to hear from you. After listening to Brooklyn's claims and considering the silence from David and Victoria, where do you land? Do you see a son finally choosing peace after years of pressure, or do you believe this should have stayed private no matter the pain involved? This situation forces uncomfortable questions about fame, control, and family loyalty, and there is no easy answer. Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments, because different perspectives help everyone understand this story more clearly. If you think Brooklyn was justified, explain why. If you believe he went too far, say that too. Just keep the conversation thoughtful and grounded in what has actually been stated publicly. If you want to stay updated as this story develops, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. New statements, reactions, or reconciliations could surface at any time, and we will cover them carefully as they do. Thank you for watching, for engaging, and for being part of a community that values depth over noise. This story is still unfolding, and the next chapter may change everything for the family involved here.